And welcome back in to Dolan's Dugout with your host, Steve Dolan. I'm Ramon Scott. Steve, great to be back with you again. Sorry for the hiatus. And we got a very interesting guest joining us today on a very special time.
Yes, our guest today, Stephen Grooms. Let me tell you a little bit about Stephen. To me, he's one of the great San Diego sports historians, and even more so, this year he is being inducted into the Kearney High School Hall of Fame. Stephen, first of all, congratulations, and thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you very much. It's quite an honor. It was an amazing road to get here.
Well, we're so glad you're here.
Well, I tell you, it's surprising. And you asked about topics. I was on the KFMB's Sports for Memories and things, and how it came about was, I think it was your son's poster at the Joe Namath game in 1968 for the Chargers.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, Stephen, because what that was in 1968, the Chargers, actually, my brother and sister and I went to that game. My brother loved Joe Namath, loved the Jets. They just won the Super Bowl. My sister was a teenager, so obviously if you were a teenage girl then, you also loved Joe Namath. And quite frankly, I was the only one who wanted the Chargers to win, which they did, because I remember we took my dad's travel all down, and my brother and sister painted on the side, Joe's guaranteed Chargers 0-3, because they were 0-2 at the time, but they did win. But as you know, Joe had made a guarantee months before that the Jets win the Super Bowl, and they did. But as you know, also, Joe get a haircut because, I guess until a couple of days ago, we all needed haircuts, actually. But
well, let me see if I can. And what's funny is that just so people know what we're talking about, it was the Life magazine article.
Yes.
Do you have a copy of this, by the way?
I don't. I'm not sure that we have it anymore, but I know we have the picture in there about Joe getting a haircut, if I remember right.
Yep, that was it. I don't know if I can show it real well.
Yep.
There you go.
Yep.
I looked all over trying to find, I looked all over trying to
Life
find.
magazine, wow.
What's that?
In Life magazine, wow.
Yeah, from December 20th of 1968. And it's funny, it was a heck of a game. The Chargers were terrible that day. They were coming off a road trip back east, and where everybody was sick and stuff, and it was a rough game. But a couple interesting things like that, and Speedy Duncan making a 95-yard return for a touchdown. Made my day. I was only a 10, 11-year-old kid.
Yeah.
But that picture, when I went to Todd Tobias, who is a Charger historian, he had never seen that picture. And it was so hard trying to find a copy of it. And then I found a copy, and then I found the magazine. I said, all right, now we're good, because it was a great time for San Diego. At that time, our sports landscape had an NBA team, a Major League Baseball, NFL team, and a couple other things. Hold on a second.
Yeah, we had a lot then, but not so much now. Right? We've lost a lot. We've lost a lot from what we had then, right?
Absolutely. It was so sad because we had, at that time, being able to go down and see the Rockets play was like inexpensive. We just had everything. And now we really don't have much of anything. Well, we have the Padres, but,
yeah, there's question.
They'll be relevant.
Yeah, there's question, it's like they're the only major league team we have left, It's just interesting how things have gone. Because you've been a sports historian and all, Stephen. What's your take? We've lost, we lost the Rockets, the Clippers, the Chargers. San Diego State threatened to move to LA for a year, so a lot of things have gone on.
Well, that'll. I'm not in favor of taking the stadium out yet, because of the fact that any NFL team that's retreated or come to a city, they move to an existing team. They went to an existing facility. The Rams moved back. Everyone that's moved has moved back to an existing facility. If we knock the facility down, there's no retreat. There's no way to come back. Even Baltimore and other places, they've always gone back. They went back to War Memorial Stadium. They go back to a sizable college stadium. If we lose the stadium, then there's nowhere for them to go. I mean, they can't come back to another 35,000 seat stadium like they were up at the StubHub. They can't come back to that. I just think a little remodeling would have been just fine.
I'm with you on that, because did the original guy who built the stadium say that for like $485 million he could have fixed it up for an NFL team?
I think it was something like that, and all that really would have been, honestly, I'm a fair-skinned person, so that stadium's not good for me. If you look out on a Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, over half the stadium is in direct sunlight, and it's uncomfortable on a Sunday afternoon. So if they'd have just built some private boxes and some shade seats on the north side, we would have had an adequate stadium. They just had to cut off half of it and rebuild it. Wouldn't have to be that big of a deal.
Yeah, I'm with you, Stephen, because the first year the Chargers played there in 1967, my family actually got season tickets in section 12, which was looking right into the sun, which the visiting teams do. And we actually moved over into Loge 39 to get out of the sun because, like you said, half of that stadium, you're looking right in the sun. Of course, that was a big advantage for the Chargers because if you were the visiting team, you were looking in the sun. You were just like this.
That's true. It was bad. That north side is not a good spot. Plus, you have the cannon. You had the cannon there. And it was just really your bacon. There's no breeze. There's nothing. So that's why, I mean, if they could have just made some changes, but now the idea is let's throw it all out because my goodness, it's so old. It's 50 years old, 52 years old. And we should destroy it. Anything over 50, we should knock it down, right?
Exactly. What about the sports arena? Because the sports arena is just over 50 years old. It was built about the same time as the stadium. What do you think there?
Exactly the same thing. They were built at the same time. Almost hard to believe is that all at that same 1966 through 69, all of it was done at the same time. And, that's another place that could probably be redeveloped because that used to be housing for militaries and that sort of thing. It was quite a place, but they could certainly rebuild that one because there, I mean, all it is a concert venue. We don't really have any teams there. I mean, you got the indoor football, you got the indoor soccer, and a couple other things.
Yeah, goals, and then of course the lacrosse team. It's interesting because one of the things that happened there is the lacrosse team. What's always intrigued me, Stephen, is that Joe Tsai, who owns the San Diego Seals lacrosse team the last 2 years, he's worth, they say, 10 to 12 billion with a B dollars. I always thought with his kind of money, and he owns the NBA, the Nets of the NBA, that maybe that Joseph Tsai could have built something at the stadium, like a stadium and a sports arena back to back on that big piece of land. But of course, that's not going to happen now because obviously San Diego State's going to be taking that land over real soon.
True. And that's such a great location. It already has the transportation for mass transportation coming in and out, even though the trolley's not designed for the arrival rate at the stadium. The trolley's great for arriving. Departure is a problem because I'll leave at the same time. It doesn't have a built-in queuing. It's a nightmare.
Well, guys, it just. So, are we major league or are we minor league, guys? I mean, the numbers would say this is still a major league town, a professional sports town, and casual fans or even residents will say, "Hey, it's a sports town because outdoor sports is so prevalent." Kind of on an amateur scale, people. Surfing or doing other activities that are sports related and just doesn't relate necessarily to teams playing in venues. We do things differently out here, obviously.
It's true. I mean, it's a small town, and we tried. I mean, I was part of a group of people. We tried to bring in the Olympics for 2024, 2028. And beyond, but then when the Olympics were awarded to Los Angeles in 2028, well, you can't have the Olympics here like for another 30 to 50 years after that. Well, I'll be 100 and some years old by then. So that ended that. But the idea behind the Olympics, having the Olympics here, was actually to spur the economy and to push forward certain developments to actually make a stadium or two. Because if we would have done 2024, 2028, we would have had the existing stadium and a new stadium built, as well as some additional upgrades into the infrastructure, and we could have actually had the Olympics here. But now, now with the stadium going away, there's no way you could have any type of Olympic level event. You can't.
Yeah, and that's interesting, Steve, because I know one thing that was talked about, I don't know if it would have worked, but it was a good idea to at least kick around, that you could have a San Diego / Tijuana Olympics, the first Olympics ever that would really be in two countries, because let's face it, like with the LA Olympics in '84, some of the events were down here in Del Mar, and obviously Tijuana is closer to San Diego than Del Mar is to LA, so I don't know if it would have been a nightmare at the border, but that could have been a possibility.
Absolutely. That was one of the things we looked at and tried to push forward. And at the time said, oh, no, you can't do that. Well, now it's actually, they've come forward and said that it can be done. But, of course, you don't have the venues in either place to do something like that.
Well, so what did you guys – go ahead, Stephen.
No, that's right. Just, we looked at that, and then when that got blown out because the IOC didn't want any part of it. And not only do you have to do with the IOC, you got to deal with the U.S. Olympic Committee as well. Out of Denver or Colorado, it's hard.
Yeah, that San Diego could host many Olympic-style venues because of its proximity to the water and just the the Olympic Training Center type of stuff. Where obviously we have one of the large, the huge training center that really goes overlooked by our own citizens in this county. It's probably more world recognized than it is recognized by the locals. But what about when Mark Ziegler floated the idea, guys, of the Aztecs playing down at Estadio Caliente? Did you put any stock into that?
I haven't seen that one.
No, I'll tell you what, Steve, I saw that. I put no stock into it. It's funny, two things, them playing at Agua Caliente. I mean, just imagine the whole border situation to get down there. And the other one, remember them playing up in LA. I'm like, yeah, right. They draw, they'd have 2,000 fans up there, just like the Chargers, who had 2,000 of their own and 25,000 the other team. But, that was silly when the Aztecs talked about going to LA for a year, which probably is not an issue now. They're going to own the land where the stadium is. But the big thing is, to me, I was thinking, hey, if you had to for 1 year, play at Southwestern College. You can get 10,000 people in there. We've all been to the CIF finals. It's electric when you have 10,000 people there. If they had to do that for 1 year, and heck, I've been to some of their games and they can announce what they want. And their crowds aren't a whole lot over 10,000 anyway.
That's true. That's a beautiful facility. And you also could use, I don't know how many people you could get in there, but you could probably add a few more seats on top of a couple of those things to add some more bleachers. Certainly could do more.
Yeah, and you could turn in the, that one, the end zones into different things too, putting some more stands in there. It just seems, Steve, were you just kind of, throw in that number? Because I agree with you. Sometimes those crowds against some of those teams, announced crowds, even at the Aztec games, seem to be maybe a little bit inflated. Those 28,000 crowds, maybe they're closer to 12 to 15, depending on the opponent.
I had, I got to be honest with you. I had a plus 10,000 whenever I did an Aztec game, because I did a lot of the games for CBS Sports Network the last few years. And the ushers are all given a crowd. And I always said it was a plus 10,000 if the ushers were told there was going to be 18,000 there, if the announced crowd was 28. If they were told there was going to be 21, the announced crowd was 31, which is something you have to be careful with now, because if you have to do social distancing, you can't be inflating those crowds. It's got to be a legitimate crowd count.
Well,
just my opinion.
You got fire marshal those guys. But what would be ideal, the perfect thing to do, and no one's saying a word about it, is rebuild San Diego Balboa Stadium into that hills behind San Diego High, because there was no reason to knock that stadium down either. That's another one that should have been left, because there was nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, Stephen, what about that stadium? Well, I guess now the Aztecs will have their 35,000 to each stadium, but that could always be used for like an outdoor soccer team, although I think San Diego State will be going after that now. It's going to be interesting to see how San Diego State uses that new stadium, because as you know, I would imagine if it's built in 2022, which is a big if, I would probably sell out the first few games and all, but the Aztecs, I would say, outside of the Sky Show, a legitimate crowd in there is probably 15 to 18,000 now for what the Aztecs are drawing, just from that, from what I'm seeing.
Probably because you can watch it on TV, and now they've become so good with the cameras and stuff. It's actually a better experience to watch it from your TV or from an online device. Now, what you can certainly do is pad the crowd and put them behind the visitor bench at Qualcomm, for example, and just put them behind there and don't let anybody on the south side. And as long as it's at night, of course. But I mean, actually, wasn't it the guys at one time, San Diego State actually flipped it and made the home side the visitors for a while?
Yeah.
What year was that? That was in the early 80s, wasn't it?
Was bad. Yeah, it was in the early 80s, and what was bad about that is when they did have a day game every once in a while, the Aztecs, the home team, would be looking in the sun, and that's the advantage you're supposed to have as the home team, is to put the other team looking in the sun.
That is true.
That's when they moved tickets because they wanted the TV cameras to see people in Aztec colors, which I thought was interesting. Hey, another issue that's going to come up this year too, because I know in the past I've done Westwood One games for the NFL in San Diego. I haven't done any in LA yet, but it's going to be interesting to see how the season goes. Because, like, for instance, who's going to be led on the sideline? This is more of a media thing, but you probably won't see those big crowds on the sidelines anymore with social distancing and all the reporters and all that. I know that's going to be severely limited to how many people are down there. I'm just curious to see how that's going to play out.
You're right. And even the Gary High School, like, for instance, I was a coach for a long time in the San Diego City School District and for football, and we limit the sidelines. Certain schools don't, certain schools do, but you got to be careful of who's on the sidelines, and you've got to keep track of all that for security reasons and for safety reasons. But yeah, right. I mean, it's a totally different world going forward, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm just not sure what's going to happen.
You wonder how much, you talk about how that is going to play out in Mission Valley, especially given the news this past week and the timetable, because, you talk about those alternative venues, and yeah, I mean, you can't just put up even say, hey, we're going to build half our stadium within, a 9 or 10 month span, and then try to, go from there. You talked about Southwestern, and I don't think they can fit a football field in Petco. Remember when they tried to play soccer at Petco, they actually had to make the field a little bit smaller than a regulation size soccer field. So these are my concerns going forward, not only for the future of professional sports in San Diego, but also for that, year or two where the Aztecs might need a real venue. I don't know. There still seems some ineptitude on all sides that makes me think that, I don't know, maybe that thing will still be standing 2, 3, 4 years down the road. We'll be playing college football in there while they try to develop around it and then finally pull the trigger. And we'll all be out there when they raise San Diego Stadium, Qualcomm Stadium, SDCCU Stadium, whatever we want to call it now. But I'm sure because of its history and, our ages, probably a tear in our eye when they raise that one, like we've seen over the last, 10 to 15 years with all these new buildings that other cities don't seem to have a problem building.
It's true, because, I mean, you think about it, how many stadiums have the Lions played in the last 53 years? How many stadiums have the Seahawks played in? And the 49ers, and here are the Chargers. We've had this one barely 53 years. You're talking about temporary venues. San Diego High, Balboa Stadium, the way the thing is built, and there would be not a big problem to build temporary stands in the north side as well as the south side, and there's still additional on the embankment to actually build stadium seating. There is a way to make that back into a temporary seating type place. There's companies. We were looking at the Olympics, and we also looked at the World Beach Games, trying to talk about build temporary venues. There are companies that will come in and build a temporary venue on that facility and be able to probably have admission 15 to 30,000 people easily into Balboa Stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why no one's really looking at it.
Still a special place, kind of, to watch a game. Steve, I just went to a game this past season. I saw your Vaqueros take on San Diego High, and you do get a feeling of nostalgia still. Watching a game there.
Well, my nephew played for San Diego High, and two of them played for San Diego High. When I showed them pictures of the south end zone with those beautiful pillars, and people going, wow, how did you let that go away? I mean, how did we let the pillars down at the south end of Zabo Stadium go away? Just amazing.
Stephen, those were beautiful. I can remember as a kid, after a game, we would wait down there for players to come out because the players would be coming out down there, going to their cars, whatever, after a game. But those pillars were just beautiful. It is real. I'm like you. It's really disappointing when something that beautiful goes away because I just wish people could see what it looked like. I mean, I'm sure there's pictures on the internet and all, but it was just a spectacular view, those pillars in the, I guess you'd say, south end zone.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking, I think it's south.
But it was a beautiful place. But yeah, Balboa Stadium's there. And again, I don't know, who knows what's going to happen with that land where the sports arena is. That's not going to be there forever. But I still think, and I don't know what his plans are, but I still think Joe Tsai, spelled Tsai, who owns the San Diego Seals Lacrosse Club, I think he's going to be a major player here eventually because, again, the guy does own the Brooklyn Nets in the NBA, and he owns their arena. And yet he lives here. He's between here and China with his company Alibaba. So I don't know why he hasn't been a major player yet, but you would think that behind the scenes, hopefully people are trying to make him one because, again, like where the stadium is now, he could have just done it all himself. He could have built it himself with his own money and still had 8 to 10 billion left. Easy for me to spend his money, of course, but there's a man, and who knows, maybe he'll do something where the sports arena is too, because it's like our buddy John Maffei always says, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig, and the sports arena needs, they keep putting lipstick on it, but it needs to be rebuilt too. I don't know what they're going to do there in the Midway District.
That's true. I mean, when you walk around that place, I remember some of the walking around and like back when I used to go see the Rockets play and the Clippers play. And those are some fun times, but I look at it, the flooring's the same and the paint's the same. The little stadium clothes the same. It needs to be, and we need a better venue. It's like, for example, Alex Smith's father, who was the principal at Helix. When he first got drafted, and I said, okay, tell me about what it's like. And this he was still with the 49ers. He goes, the stadiums are amazing. He goes, you've got to go see St. Louis. Of course, now St. Louis doesn't have a football team anymore, but he was talking about raving about how St. Louis was so beautiful. And I've seen pictures of it, and we don't have a venue at all that's even close to that. So, we need to come up with something like that.
Yeah, and you could argue that they've actually done a better job kind of upkeep on the sports arena than the stadium, and that's not saying much because if you go to the sports arena today and if you went to the sports arena in 1973, kind of the same thing with just some,
it's the same.
And that's what's so disappointing for kind of our generation seeing it happen, and maybe that's why the younger generation isn't missing much. Especially given the transplant status of San Diego, what everybody talks about it, and now everybody, especially our youth, latches on to different teams, and they've been doing that for a couple of decades now. I mean, you just didn't find that's kind of what led me. When I was a kid, I kind of started to root for other teams because our teams weren't very good, but then I realized just a short time later, even before I got into my teens, I realized, I should be rooting for San Diego teams because of this, situation that kind of has evolved the way it has. But Stephen, speaking of redevelopments, I want to turn to 1954 Comet Way. They've done a great job at Kearney High, keeping around some of the old, if you will, and incorporating some of the new. As the population of the school has kind of dwindled over the years, it still has that charm. And you're Mr. Comet, so tell us what you think about Kearney High now and Kearney High then, because I still think there's a special feel anytime you're around Kearney athletics, especially football with those great uniforms and the history of Kearney High School.
Well, the striped uniforms were something we had in the early 60s, about 61, and then we lost them for a few years because of some weird national regulation about not having the ability to have from here to here you cannot have any color. It cannot have white on the home uniforms. You have the color of the body. Then the stripes could be any color but white. So that's why we had to add the color silver or gray into the school colors of being silver, maroon, and white. The trouble we haven't been able to solve is the road uniforms. Because the road uniform has to be a white body, and you can have anything on the shoulders, but it cannot be on the shoulders. It can't be anything but white on the road uniforms. So we went, and you'll laugh, but this is kind of funny. We went out and we found a way. We went and experimented on two different things. A bunch of things came down to two. One was, what is the definition of white? I'm an art student, so what color is white? So we found a color from Riddell, which was called ghost white. Matter of fact, I happen to have one here.
Wow.
This is one of the jerseys that we came up with as a mock-up. And so I don't know if you can see. Can you see the stripes?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Go Comets.
The legal people felt that was actually silver. They said it was gray, that it was not white. And I said, well, it says on the bill Navajo white. I mean, not Navajo white, but ghost white. And so we have white and ghost white. They said, no, that's silver or gray. That's not white. And I says, it is definitely white. And they said, no, you cannot use them. So we went another direction. I don't have it with me, but what it was a pretty funny. You've seen the nylon jerseys. So I went out to a company here in town, in fact, who's also in the news recently, Played Against Sports, and they have the ability to actually bond or iron on stripes. So I had them take this shiny white, and we took white plastic and put a bunch of stripes across the shoulder. I said, here we go. I took it down to Helix at a softball game at night and took it to the mound. I says, can you see the stripes in the stands? Yes. I says, okay, great. So I went down. I said, here we go. Here's the solution for the road games. No. You can't have more than 3 inches of stripes across the whole thing after an aftermarket edition. That's an aftermarket edition. I says, I'm trying to solve a problem. No, you still haven't quite got it. And I says, okay, I give up. So Kearney will not have, road stripes. I mean, until maybe a next generation. But it's absolute sanity.
Isn't it amazing though? I mean, because people would never think of that, and what you have to go through even for uniforms.
Oh yeah, I mean, and the amount of work we went on, and it went viral when we first lost the stripes, because it'd been 50 some years, and suddenly they were gone, like overnight, and it's like nobody really knew, and so it went out on Yahoo and all the different social media things, and we got a lot of hits, and a lot of things about it. Now, what's interesting is outside the state of California, there's schools that all have the same exact uniforms we had from 61 through 2010 or so, 2012, whatever it was, and they actually are still using the same ones out in Texas and the Midwest. They still have the road uniforms with the maroon stripes and the white stripes. But in California, we're California. We don't fight those type of rules. And so it was nobody really wants to push it to a legal level, which would have been the right thing to do, but no one really has a stomach for that.
Stephen, what do you think, speaking of high school football, of course, the season, I believe the scrimmages are August 21st, the first games are August 28th. Do you see them coming off, or with the whole thing with going on with the coronavirus, or no, or could they play maybe games? The player gets 4 tickets and that's it, or what do you see as far as high school football for this year?
I've been listening, and I mean, right now they don't even have a date for the school to go back in, and I don't know what that looks like. Even at Kearney, we don't actually have a coach yet. We're still right at the same time COVID hit. Our coach had left to go to Hoover, and now we're without a coach, without a program, without all this. Even though we will have one. I mean, I know they're interviewing and they just not all that, but I'm not in the middle of that one. But I don't see how they're going to be able to do it that quickly, because without the school stuff. Because right now, if you notice, the first games are even been before the school opens.
Yeah.
And so how are you going to do that? I don't see how you do that. There's so many issues like the sanitary cleaning of the uniforms, cleaning of the helmets. Where do you put everything? There's a lot of things that are unanswered. I know the coaches have been having meetings and conference calls, but even there, they don't really have the juice to do anything because they're they just don't. I mean, there's a lot of unknown. It comes from the district level, the Department of Education.
Yeah, and is it my understanding, Ramon may know, is it my understanding that in San Diego County it's kind of like district by district deciding whether you play football or have sports this year? Have you heard that? I believe I heard that from Adam Paul, who's been on the show with us quite often.
Yeah, I don't know. He's in the know on some of these things, and
Yeah.
I'm not. I've kept out of that part of it, but man, it's a tough time because you have to go out and you raise money for the football programs and the other sports programs because there's not enough money to actually field a team without proper fundraising. Inner city schools really don't have the fundraising depth that say a La Jolla has or some of the better zip codes. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah, look how long it took for those 4 schools to get lights. For example.
Well, look at Kearney, for example. Kearney historically has played more road games than any other school in San Diego County history. Seriously, they only had, it was like 60 home games that were truly home games on campus or in a home stadium. Even Mesa College, where Slater moved us down to, that was a road game for us because of the fact that if you ever went to the game, and I think we probably played El Cap, maybe not, but the way the press box is set up, it's opposite of the home team. So for Kearney, we always went on what was the equivalent of the visitor side, which would be the east side. The press box is on the west side, and so if you know that the yard markers have to be on the side of the visiting team. We played every game there with the yard markers and the crew that is actually working the lines were always on our home side. So that was still a road game.
Wow.
It was in our neighborhood, but it was equivalent of even like Bert would say, it was a road game. He always had to do with it.
Bert Slater, right? I remember, boy, when I think of Kearney, I think of Bert Slater in football and Jack Taylor in baseball. I mean, you guys had some good history there.
Oh, absolutely. And I didn't want to forget, Ramon, what you were talking about as far as the school. Having the stadium is so different and such a joy to have a stadium, a beautiful facility now. Now we just got to get the rest of it built up, to make sure that we're equal for Title IX and like the girls softball and other fields. And that's like the next phase. But there's one thing I'm not sure if you're aware of is the fact that the whole front of the school is being remodeled and rebuilt very much like Hoover has been, with a 2 to 3 story building in front. So that's coming up in the next couple of years. Again, with the Corona and everything else, the economics of everything are shifting to where who knows what the money's going to look like to do that. Because our stadium, when you look at Kearney, that particular one was built in 1954, had its first real home game with lights and everything else. But that's only like 3 or 4 years ago.
Right. Yeah. And also a school that, really was part of the history and fabric of prep sports in the county. There used to be probably over 3,000 students, and you almost have half that, I would think, now.
Right. Well, I mean, right. I mean, when I went there, it was somewhere between 3,300 to 3,700 kids. That, of course, we didn't have Sarah, we didn't have Mira Mesa, we didn't have University City. Madison opened just a few years before. Claremont, I mean, you look at all the different schools. We had people from all over San Diego coming there. It was a melting pot. And, I mean, I think about it, like, for instance, when I was there and I started playing in 73, we had enough, and that was one of Bert's favorite things is we had so many kids. He put together 2 JV teams and a varsity team because he had so many kids that wanted to play, and he loved the students. He loved the game and the sport. As a student of the sport, he put together, like I say, 2 JV teams. One of us, we played the freshman teams for all the private schools, and anybody who had a freshman class like Helix, we played Helix in University City, not University High School, Cathedral now. We played Imperial High School. from the Valley. We played, everything we did was, we played the freshman teams. And the regular JV team played the other schools we were normally playing. And
You know,
but
Steve,
we played two. We had an offensive team and a defensive team, even on the second JV team.
isn't that interesting how many more people were playing back then? You know what's funny back then, too, because you were mentioning stadiums. Going way back in East County, when Santana first opened, it played at El Cap. For years, Grossmont played at Helix. For years, El Cajon played at Granite. So now everybody's got their own stadium, and they don't know how good that is. Because I remember that day. I mean, back in the day, even in the early 60s, El Capitan, our home games were at Gillespie Field, or Cajon Speedway, where they used to have the racing. And what was funny about it is I can remember as a little kid knowing some of the football players, they'd say, they'd be out there on the football field seeing broken glass from the cars that raced there on Saturday night at Cajon Speedway. So facilities now are so much better than they used to be. I mean, I look at my alma mater, El Capitan. I mean, so many of those fields like that are just spectacular. Grossmont, they're all spectacular compared to what they used to be. They used to play, if you were lucky, you played, on a field that was half grass and half dirt.
Well, we're both too young to have experienced it, but the football carnivals that they had down at San Diego Balboa Stadium, and I never went to one of those, but that is truly phenomenal. When you think about it, they brought all the drum and the marching teams and the football teams to play essentially a quarter of a game. I mean, to try and organize something like that, I don't even know how you'd even do that.
It was a big event.
Oh, yeah, the Carnival. They used to call it the Grossmont League Carnival. In Grossmont League, you played at San Diego State, and back then you had 8 teams, so everybody played a quarter. You had the East, West, North, South, whatever, and like you say, the marching bands. But, of course, the atmosphere back then was so much different because everybody did have a marching band back then.
That's true, and that's one thing that Kearney does not have a marching band. They don't have a pep band. We don't have any music at all as far as that goes. It's the kids do it on their own through their own self-study and things like that. But, I tell you something, one thing I want to make sure I'm absolutely crystal clear on is it better or worse? I tell you that the work that the teachers and administration at Kearney have done a great job. The graduation rate is higher. The 4-year college, being signed up for those is so much higher. And as the alumni president, which I'm not any longer, and I just do the foundation, I'm still involved in the Alumni Association, but I focused on my work on the foundation. Is as the alumni president, you get to deal, not only do you deal with the NFL greats, the ones that are the Grammy Award winners and this sort of thing, but as the alumni president, you get to talk to the homeless people. You get to help them find that they need hotel rooms and things. And that's, I'm glad to see that we're focusing on that, is the fact that these kids coming out of Kearney High School will have education, and we have what our foundation has done is set them up with some classes and some tools for entrepreneurship. And they're actually, like, for instance, we have kids that are actually making products, designing, making, building, putting them on a website, writing all the narrative, and actually putting it out, publishing it for to be sold. And so these kids will come out and will be able to have a resume and a portfolio of things that they've done. And you can't beat that. I mean, I just want to make sure I'm crystal clear. The school has done a great job with the educational part of it. It's equal to, if not superior to, the La Jolla High or any other private schools that are out there. They've done a great job.
Wow. Well, Stephen, hey, I wanted to change topics with you for just a minute because, as I say, I mean, I know you know San Diego history as well as anybody when it comes to sports. One thing I find interesting in San Diego nowadays, we talked earlier, we have one major league team, so to speak, in the Padres, and then the next team in San Diego, I say number 2 would be the San Diego State basketball team, and then after that, outside football team. But what's funny, we have 2 sports talk stations, 97.3 The Fan, which I think does a great job, and also, 1360. But now you got Scott Kaplan and those people talking about bringing 1090 back. And believe it or not, one of the financial guys from KFMB 760, I can't remember his name, but he now does The Fan Saturday morning from 9 to 10 o'clock because KFMB and Kogo and all are together. But anyway, he's saying that he thinks KFMB one day will be an all sports talk station. So I'm thinking, We have one pro. We could have 3 to 4 sports talk stations in San Diego. Is that a little bit of overkill? Is there that much sports interest in our town?
I don't know if it's that centered on local, because I mean, I've got people that in my company that are totally into sports podcasts and things like that. If it's San Diego centric, I don't know if there's enough stuff to talk about. But almost everybody here has a team that they support outside of San Diego, whether it's the Bears, the Raiders, or this sort of thing. And what I don't understand is how in the world that on the Union Tribune and certain things, they keep wanting to draw us back into the Chargers when nobody cares. I don't understand that.
Yeah, I'll throw in a little tidbit on from my perspective, because it's some of the things I like other than prep sports. But I don't know if you saw yesterday that California is on the fast track right now to legalize sports betting, and could be on the ballot come November, because after what's happened over the past couple of months, you got big budget shortfalls and money not coming in, and they passed there's going to be a bill. I mean, they got 3 weeks right now to get things done up in Sacramento, and I would think they're going to do it just because of the situation. And what it's going to do, it's going to put sports books in Indian casinos and racetracks, and maybe that's where, I don't know about 4 sports radio stations, but the fact that we don't have a lot of sports, I mean, I think that, people talk about it as a transplant town and what people like, but that's going to be a little bit of a sidebar in the months moving ahead. I mean, it's just a fact right now. It's on the fast track. Only something that would derail it in the next 3 weeks, if that bill doesn't get put forth to the voters, is going to keep that down. So that was just interesting news, I thought, that came down yesterday. It looks like California on the fast track to sports betting right now.
Let me ask you guys about something that's really intriguing to me, because I was devastated when the Chargers left. I mean, heck, my father was buried in his Charger jersey. They watched the games, and okay, we are truly Charger fans. And now I've given them 3 years to do their thing. Now I'm kind of going, okay, I'll be a Charger fan again. Well, what really hurt the worst was the Breitbart Hall of Fame being closed down in Balboa Park and them selling off all the stuff. And that just really, that pissed me off, because the stuff that's put there should have been a shrine, should never been touched. But then they put it out there and started selling it on online, on webs and things like this. Now, we do have a Hall of Fame for coaches. We do have a Hall of Fame for high school coaches, high school referees. There is not one that's centralized for high school athletes. That's what I'm going to be focusing on the next year, is to see how to build one, form one, and actually create one, be it either online or actually physically in person, that you can go to, because there isn't one. We don't have one, for example, at my high school, and I think you have one at El Cap, and certain schools have Hall of Fames, but yet we're losing the memories of these young men and young women that have done things, and we're losing that. And I know for a fact that, like right now with all the issues with it going around, to honor and recognize some of the heroes that played sports and did good things in San Diego, you need to have a Hall of Fame. You need to recognize achievement, and we don't have that right now.
Yeah, Steve, I'm with you. I mean, when you think back, we can go back to the Marcus Allens and the Bill Waltons and the Kelsey Plums in basketball and the Candace Wiggins in basketball. We do need one. I mean, we do have one out at El Capitan, which is great, but I've always said we need a Hall of Fame. And one thing I did say, and Ramon was there a couple, 3 years ago, our first boss for both of us, the late, great Bill Dickens from the Daily Californian in El Cajon. One thing I said when I was one of several who spoke at his memorial service, we also could use in that Hall of Fame sports writers. I think the first sports writer who would need to go into a high school Hall of Fame would be the late, great Bill Dickens, because that was his life.
Okay. Well, let's find a way to make it happen, because I happen to believe, like all the stuff that just went on down this last weekend or so, the riots and things, there's people that are not being recognized properly for the good things that they've done for the city of San Diego, or the city, the state, the community. We need to be able to recognize greatness and good things that are going on. We don't have a process or an avenue, and it's a problem, because, for example, even at Breitbart, even though I met Bob and I thought the world of him, but the only way you got in was if you were a professional or you were an Olympian, or you were the it's so rare. I mean, so you take a guy like there's so many people like Darnay, for example. Darnay Scott out at Kearney did some
Great comment.
Yeah.
Alan Trammell.
Trammell,
Yeah.
like Trammell goes in the Baseball Hall of Fame, and he's in the Kearney, and he's in our Hall of Fame. Those are normal ones, but there's a lot of people that are out there that that need to be recognized for the great things that they've done. There's, like for instance, I can go on for days about the different names of different people that are not in any type of Hall of Fame, but when you think about it, yeah, they should be, and we don't have a process of recognizing them.
Yeah, and does it, Steve? They move those. That's a great point by you, Stephen. They moved those placards to Petco Park, right? The over 150 names that are in the Breitbart Hall of Fame. But those displays at the Hall of Champions is, you look at it now, and I'm not saying it was crudely done. It was actually kind of neat and kind of quaint when you walked around and looked at the different, it kind of just was a representation of the type of activities that you could do. And they had the surfing exhibits and things like that. But now, after vacating that property in Balboa Park, I mean, there's nothing really like that. And I don't know. I remember playing a poker tournament down there and people discovering it for the first time. They'd never been there, and I was just there playing like a charity poker tournament. I haven't been there several times, and enjoyed the Hall of Champions. And man, that's another one that's gotten away from us.
That was the biggest one for me, because once you lose your history, then you lose the connectiveness. I know, like with the films, for example, we actually went out and found every high school film that we could find. And as a coach, I'm working to convert all of the ones that I have for teams that we played and games that we played at La Jolla, Kearney, University City, at Hoover, and posting them online so people could actually see them. For example, we pulled up a film from the class of 70. Well, the football season 73, class of 74, and I was speaking to the head coach out of Bonita Vista, and he goes, "Oh yeah, we played Kearney in 73." I said, "I've got that film." No, because I don't know. And so he cried. He could not believe that film was still available and online to go see it. Had no idea that it was still out there. And we've got to get a hold of those things before we lose that history.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And Steve, that's been my commitment to, continuing my, pursuit of covering athletics. You mentioned Bill and what he's done. And, I've got other things in my life that I've got to work on, but now I've got a commitment. I mean, that's why East County Sports is going to still exist, because that's I'm paying my debt to society, man. I got to keep covering these things and trying to keep them alive. I was thinking that during the pandemic, I could actually sit down and start to, archive some of the stuff that's kind of gotten away from me over the years of putting stuff on the website for Bill and Wanda, and kind of the back end work that myself and some of the other webmasters that have helped me have done over the years. But you know what, COVID got in the I don't know. I just didn't do it. Maybe when I retire, I can sit back and start to put everything together before it's too late.
Oh, exactly. Well, I mean, you look at like Rick Smith's Particle Sports. Have you looked at that?
Yeah.
You need to get Rick and talk to Rick, because talk about an encyclopedia. Love to talk to Rick.
Yeah, Rick's perfect. Just so people know a little bit of Rick's background, Rick started out the San Diego Evening Tribune newspaper. We used to have a morning and an evening paper. He was a PR director for many years of the San Diego Chargers, then for many years for the LA and then St. Louis Rams. And one thing about Rick, I mean, how well was Rick respected in the NFL? One thing I know about Rick, I've done a few Super Bowls, worked a few Super Bowls in the media. And Rick, for instance, they would have on Friday night, the commissioner would have a big party where like 4,000 people could go. And my wife and I, right before we got married, went, and it was like the party that you couldn't have paid to go. They were just as spectacular as could be. But Rick Smith was the one in charge of the tickets. That's how well respected Rick is in the NFL. I tell you what, that's a good idea, Steve. I'm going to get Rick to come on with us. We're going to give it a shot. Anyway, I know he just turned 80, but the man's as sharp as a tack. And I don't think anybody right now is more of an encyclopedia on San Diego high school sports than Rick Smith. And yeah, I'm going to get in touch with him after we're done today.
Hey, you talk about
Rick and Steve Brand and these guys.
Yeah.
And originally we talked about with Steve Brand about putting together a Hall of Fame for high schools down at the place, but that was when the negotiations for the sale of the Brightboard thing, and it just kind of fell apart. But he's another one. He's truly a great gift. And Bruce Ward, there's some guys out here, just phenomenal guys you need to talk to.
Steve, one of the things funny, talk about Rick Smith's website, and if anybody hasn't gone to Parlance and Sports, and that, in fact, Stephen, you can look back at some of his football articles, because one thing that Rick likes to do is take some of those pictures, and you could see some of those Comet uniforms. They look, it's funny, they probably look better in black and white than they do in color from back in the day, at least for nostalgia and bring a tear to your eye. But Rick has been affected by the pandemic. You know why? Because where he goes to look at some of the microfiche, he hasn't been able to access it during the pandemic. So we haven't had any updates for like 2 months on the website. And that's, if you go there, every week, especially during the school year, he never misses an update of either, retelling some tales that need to be told and need to be remembered, or just giving his own perspective of the latest high school football or basketball poll, for example. So, boy, we need to get that library open back up so Rick can get back in there and give us something to read during the pandemic.
Absolutely. I love people like Rick, because he makes things come together, and it's right, because he has nothing to feed off of, to scab and to tag into, to actually build the up-to-date stuff. So it's kind of hard to update. Like I use his stuff all the time, because it makes a lot of our alums and other people that I know I'm able to say, okay, you're still alive. I mean, because you're still relevant, because you see it there.
Yeah, it's interesting, Steve, when we talk about Rick Smith, just for Ramon, I don't know how well he knows him, but I will tell you something, Ramon. If he comes on the show, he's going to come up with a nickname for you, because he had a nickname for absolutely everybody. I mean, for instance, our good friend Rick Hill, the late great Rick Hill from Helix. Rick was a quiet guy, but he, in like 3 words, he could just say, "You're done now," or whatever, and he'd have it done. Rick Smith called him the Quiet Assassin, and he has a nickname for everybody. I mean, if I could, he called me Biff, and I was like, "Rick, where'd you get a nickname like that from?" And he said, "Well, what happened is that there was something about a writer in the 1930s named Torchy Blaine, and of course at the time I was a sports writer. He said, 'You reminded me of Torchy Blaine.'" I'm like, "Okay, thank you very much," but I went around the 1930s, so just so you know, if Rick Smith comes on the show, he will have a nickname for you. And hey, just so you know, guys, one other thing, I know we're running out of time here, but Stephen Grooms, we just really, really thank you so much for being with us, and we hope to have you on again. Maybe we can have you on with Rick Smith, because, I mean, I don't know 2 better historians than you guys, but we'll definitely want to have you on again. We definitely want to have Rick Smith on one day with us, too.
Glad to. Anytime I can be of help. And like I say, I'm going to work on that Hall of Fame, and I'll be calling you guys up to help us out on that.
Yeah, and I showed a
and the Hall of Fame for the writers as well, because you're right. I mean, like, for example, like in our case at Kearney, we've got a quarterback, Don Norcross, who also is a great writer. Yeah. And there is room for a Hall of Fame for writers, other than back east for like different things. So there's got to be one for here, San Diego.
Yeah, let's do that. Well, Stephen, once again, thank you so much for catching up with us. We look forward to having you on again with us. And we want to thank all of our listeners for being with us today, too. And thank you most of all also to Ramon Scott. Because, Stephen, as you know, without Ramon, we can't put this show together. I don't know what he does, but somehow he gets us on. And Ramon, thanks so much for doing that. And again, Stephen, thanks so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much.
All right. Again, have a good day.
You too.
All right, Steve Dolan, I'm Ramon Scott. Thank you, Stephen, and good night, everybody.